All right, good morning, Doug. Today is the inauguration of Milei, and we've got questions from our members of the file. The first question has to do with Milei. So, first of all, I guess I should get your take on if you had interactions with anybody in Buenos Aires, what do they think about what's going on there?
Yeah, I've had a few, and here we are doing a podcast on a Sunday. This is further proof that there's no rest for the wicked. But here I am in Buenos Aires, and I have been out with a number of people of since I've been here. So what's going to happen? So today, Sunday, the 10th of December, is when Milei is going to be installed as president. I'll tell you what I've heard, okay? My maid, who's quite intelligent, but is part of the lower middle class, she tells me that she's been invited by, and she's not a rightist. I mean, she's part of the lower middle class that's, she says that 40 or 50% of the people are beneath the poverty line. I guess she'd know because when she goes home, that's the part of town she lives. That's interesting. And she says that several friends of hers are taking shooting lessons, and they invited her to take shooting lessons, not because they're apparently ideological one way or another, but they just expect violence in the upcoming time. Sure, they're not hardcore leftists, her friends, but anyway, that's what she said. I thought that was kind of disturbing. And she's favorably inclined towards Milei and what he wants to do, but she doesn't think it'll work because there's going to be so much resistance. And further on that from her, she says that she thinks, and she's a smart woman, she thinks that about 30% of this country are, as opposed to Milei, as people with Trump derangement syndrome, are opposed to Trump. That was pretty disturbing. Now, that's from my maid in one section of the society. Now, on the other hand, I go to these two meetings here in BA with people from the upper stratum of society. And I basically just listened, trying to find out what was happening because these guys live here. And the agreement was, it seems to me, that it pretty much echoes what Christina said from these guys. About a third of the people absolutely hate Milei and everything that they think he stands for. And they expect that there's going to be a real upset. So, listen, I'm here in the Recoleta, which is the Upper East Side of Buenos Aires, and I have absolutely no indication anything is going on outside. But it wouldn't be in this part of town where anything goes on. So we'll know more tomorrow. But this is going to be exciting, I think. Now, the question is, what's Milei going to do about it? And, well, I think I know what he wants to do. As far as I'm concerned, he thinks exactly the way we do. But what will he be able to do? And you look at the people that he's hired for his cabinet. Well, they're basically like conventional political hacks that know their way around the system. So I don't know what to make of that. I really don't.
Well, it sounds like kind of when Trump came in with lots of plans, brought in people who are familiar with the system, and kind of kept a lot of things from being done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it was a huge mistake on Trump's part, surrounding himself with all kinds of people. I mean, not that I not that I'm a Trumpite, I mean, but it was very bad judgment on his part, surrounding himself with scorpions and snakes, which he basically did, and conventional people that tried to slow everything he tried to do down. So this is a problem. What I would do if I was Milei and thought I could get away with it, the best thing you can do is pull the Band-Aid off. And if he does pull the Band-Aid off, just rip it off altogether, there's going to be a lot of unemployed people that were sopping at the corporate tit in the states. They're going to lose their incomes, and it's the Peronist system, which is utterly corrupt, is so entrenched in this country. It's really hard to turn it around. But people want to turn it around because they know it's corrupt. They know it's stupid. All but that 30% that we were talking about. I don't know.
Wouldn't, if he just got rid of the legal tender law or stopped enforcing it so that people could use whatever currency they wanted to freely, wouldn't that alone change things dramatically? And that seems like the executive power he could just don't enforce it. He controls the Ministry of Interior, whoever manages that.
Yeah, that'd be huge. Getting rid of the dual exchange rates, which are a gigantic distortion. The other thing he should do is, since this place is an agricultural powerhouse, is get rid of the taxes on exports. I'm not sure most people are aware of the fact that if you export any or not all, but most agricultural products, soybeans, wheat, cattle, things of that nature, you have to pay an export duty. In other words, it's discouraging production and discouraging exports by taxing the exports. So farmers, if soybean prices are high, they have to pay up to 30% before they can put it on the boat. And then whatever's left over, the 70% that's left over, then they got to pay income tax on that. It's completely insane. So
and they have to do it at the distorted exchange rate.
Yeah, it's all completely insane. So I think he ought to rip off the Band-Aid, and he may need the army to keep the capita censi, keep the head count under control. But look what happened in Chile. The things that Pinochet was able to do, and that was a much more volatile situation where a couple thousand people got killed, and there was an actual communist, Allende, that was going to be president. Chile was much more volatile back in those days, and the things that the Chicago boys, students of Milton Friedman, did after Allende joined the Choir Invisible and Pinochet took over. I mean, the place turned from a backward mining province to the most prosperous country in Latin America by far.
And quickly.
And quickly, that's right. With the booming stock market and everything else. So my feeling is that if he pulls this off, if he's bold, it can do at least as well as Chile did. Because Argentina is much more outward looking than Chile. Chile is a very inward looking country surrounded by the desert on the north and the empty Pacific Ocean on one side. The odds of it happening here are much better. And he's not going to kill a couple thousand people, which is what Pinochet did, which is odd because Pinochet is looked at as being Latin America's answer to Hitler, which is completely absurd. Yes, a couple thousand people apparently got killed. And I think they probably had it coming, quite frankly. Not that I advocate going out and killing the bad guys, but that won't happen here with Milei. And interestingly, of course, after Chile became very prosperous, what do? Well, they go back to electing a communist again. So
Yeah.
situation is pretty hopeless worldwide, probably. But well, let's see what happens. That's all you can say. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not sure exactly how bold Milei is going to be, but we'll know in the next month.
Yeah, if nothing else, there's a setup for something good to happen, which has not been on the horizon there in a while.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. So yeah,
Okay.
I got high hopes. And
Okay.
finally, people won't think that I'm an idiot for investing in Argentina, hopefully.
And that's what matters most.
That's right. It's not like I wasn't warned. I was warned.
All right, maybe you look like a genius in the end. Let's see.
That's right.
All right. So let's get some of these questions. First question was about Milei. I think we covered that. So next was, has Doug watched Junior Bonner by Sam Peckinpah?
No, I haven't seen Junior Bonner, but I'm a huge fan of Sam Peckinpah as a director. Huge fan. In fact, it's hard to say, but one of my 2 or 3 favorite movies is The Wild Bunch, which and he totally reformed the movie business with the way he did that movie, the graphic violence, among other things. But there's an ethical strain. I'll talk about The Wild Bunch because I haven't seen Junior Bonner and I want to see it. He's done, I don't know, I guess he's directed at least a dozen movies and they all look good. I've seen a number of them and they were all good, in my opinion. You ought to go on Google or wherever and look for Sam Peckinpah and they'll give you the movies. And it'll be great watching fun, I promise. But the reason why, and The Wild Bunch, I think, was the movie that made him famous, justifiably, is it's Aristotelian drama. It has a beginning and an end with a plot line, with the good guys, or let's say the not so bad guys, against the really bad guys, and that would be typical Peckinpah. He doesn't see really good guys out there, just not so bad guys. And there's a climax followed by a catharsis, and it's pretty close to a perfect movie. Of course, you can say Casablanca is also pretty close to it being a perfect movie as well. But yeah, I'm glad that I was reminded, because when I get to Uruguay, where I have a television, I don't have a television here in Buenos Aires. I'm going to put Junior Bonner on my watch list.
Okay, good. Let's see. Next question. Doug, I've heard your comments about your opinion stating that we do not need a government. Please suggest an idea of an alternative society. Do you advocate local forms of security, no defense against enemies, city-states?
Well, listen, everybody hates Disney Corporation, as they should, but Disneyland, or should I say Disney World, better example, they have their own security within there, and it's not needed very often. So that, look, anything that is needed or wanted by a society will be provided by entrepreneurs who do it for a profit, which means they're doing it on a sustainable basis without costs to people that don't think they need it or want it. And as far as invasions, it's funny talking with Harry Brown about this, who everybody that's listening should know or should read his books, should read his book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. But Harry's written a dozen books, so any of them are good reads, I promise you. So I said, Harry, how would you solve the solution? And Harry said, well, if the Chinese invaded after they landed on the West Coast, I expect that within a week, half of them would have opened up McDonald's franchises to, join the wonderful lifestyle. And the other half, who were bad actors, would disappear off the streets at night. And that would be the end of the story. So there's more to it than that. But the military, the Defense Department, is not defending the US, it's bankrupting the US, and it is making the US an active target for all kinds of things, from nuclear missiles to terrorist attacks. So there are many, many solutions that are much, much cheaper and much more effective than the really stupid and destructive way that the country is being defended today. It's a long answer to the question. It's worthy of a long answer. That's a very brief answer.
Okay.
And to further, if you want to look into this, once again, I will recommend the book, short book, easy to read book, very good book, The Market for Liberty by Morris and Linda Tannehill, which, as I've said before on this podcast, is the book that, after I gave it to a friend and he translated it into Spanish and it was published here in Argentina, is the book that he says, and he should know, is the book that converted Milei to being an anarcho-capitalist and calling himself as such. So read The Market for Liberty, and it's on the internet free, I think.
Yep, it is. Okay. All right, Doug, what are the most significant implications of the Dutch election results for the future of the country and European Union? They elected the right-wing Donald Trump lookalike guy. I can't recall his name.
Geert Wilders, I think.
Yeah.
Well, we both have a friend in Punta del Este who's a Dutch banker who's an anarcho-capitalist, and he's a good friend of Geert Wilders. And since I haven't been back to Punta to talk to him about that, since his name is Geert too, there are two Geerts actually, I want to ask him exactly what he thinks, because he keeps in touch with Wilders all the time. They're good buddies. So that question's a little bit premature. 2 weeks from now, after I see our Dutch friend in Punta, I'll be able to give a definitive answer to that question. But not now. But it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know what this guy in Holland's exact views are. Anybody that is not an active socialist, is not a pathological progressive, is deemed far right by the press. So who knows what the facts are? You can't believe anything you read in the press.
Okay. All right. Next question. In countries that experience hyperinflation, is it inevitable that they must go through a long and arduous economic depression before they can rebuild, or can it be avoided?
Well, that's a good question. My opinion is that it doesn't have to be long and arduous. It can be short and sharp. And that's what I hope we see here in Argentina now, short and sharp, where people that are providing goods and services that the market doesn't want, but maybe the government does, and they'll have to go out and find some other way to put bread on the table. That's all there is to it. And institutions, or I should say companies, will fail, but the real wealth, the bricks and mortar and the technology and the factories, if they're any good, they'll all still be there, and things will reorient. And things can get better really quickly. I mean, people forget that both Germany and Japan, after World War II, were flattened. They were flattened. And we very quickly turned around and boomed. In fact, Korea, after the Korean War, was even worse than Germany or Japan, because the Americans dropped more bombs on Korea than they dropped in all World War II. It was incredible. And Korea is one of the most prosperous countries in the world now, and has been prosperous for a long time. So that shows that, and we're not talking about a bombed out country, which was almost back in the Stone Age. And there's a lot more capital and internationally oriented investment than there was back in those days. So yeah, it'll be sharp. And there'll be a lot of unhappy people that deserve to be unhappy, but they can straighten out and fly right, and maybe live productive, and who knows, maybe even happy lives where they can spend their idle hours doing something other than going out in the streets and picketing or something.
Yeah. Okay. On the topic of sending kids to university, I agree that with the cost of university being ridiculously high and the possible brainwashing agenda, what are the possible alternatives for kids growing up in an upper middle class households, though? Trade schools, sales, marketing, sales training, entrepreneurship, if they show interest, etc. What else
Well,
is there?
you should answer that question. Because we
Well,
talk about it all the time.
well, we're working on it. Yeah. And I mean, we, the book that we're working on, Renaissance Man, is designed to provide an alternative program for people to follow so that they become prepared to engage with the world, but also have enough breadth of understanding about the different possibilities in the world that they don't have to commit necessarily to a trade school right away, although that can be a great living and people can build a great life, going to trade schools and building businesses around it after, once they have the skills. But this is designed to give them the broader breadth of education while pushing them into direct experience with the world as fast as possible. So there is another path to it. We're working on it, and my son is the guinea pig for it. And yeah, I'll have a link to his little blog if you want to follow his progress in it, because he's experiencing it before we're done creating the program. So if you want a sneak peek, you can check that out.
Yeah, because I suspect that your son Max will soon be, well, he's already an EMT. He'll soon be a chess master. He'll be skilled in martial arts. He'll be skilled in ranching and farming and riding. He'll be able to do almost anything. And by the time he's 22, which is about when most people graduate from college, having absorbed nothing but stupid neo-Marxist ideas and completely meaningless garbage in most cases, I mean, he'll already be on the path of a nonviolent Alexander the Great.
That'd be fantastic. Okay. And next question. You might like this one. I don't know. Have you ever read Proverbs?
The Bible chapter. No, not all the way through. I have read the Psalms all the way through, actually. And, I'll tell you what my feeling is, that Pareto's law is true of almost everything. And one way of describing Pareto's law is that 80% of everything is crap. And 20% is pretty good. And 20% of that 20% is really good. So the key is to, separate the dross from the gold. And yeah, I've read selections of Proverbs, and, some are really good folk wisdom, but some of them are irrelevant or maybe not wise at all. How about Aesop's fables? I mean, they're kind of like slightly longer proverbs. I mean, yeah, sure, I'm all for concise wisdom, quotables.
Yeah.
Everybody that's famous has done, a 1 or 2 sentence quote.
Aphorisms, right?
Aphorisms, right? Yeah, so what's the difference between a proverb and an aphorism? I'm not sure there is one.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. Okay. Uh, let's see. Back to Malay. Do you think the election in Argentina will inspire others of similar belief and fortitude in Latin America or elsewhere?
Well, I certainly hope so. And maybe Wilders in Holland is one example. Maybe not a very good example, but maybe not such a bad example, because it's a different situation in El Salvador. Bukele in El Salvador, another possibility. In Guatemala, another really unlikely place. There was this really model type, good looking woman who was 34, a year too young to run for president of Guatemala. And she was getting traction and has exactly the same ideas as Milei does. So we'll see what happens with her. Look, anything's possible. But, just like that 30% of the Argentine population, and it's the same 30% of the US population. I mean, maybe it's more like 20%, that Pareto's law, 20% of the population are, basically worthless, and 20% of that 20% are actual criminals. So you got to look at the good part of the spectrum and the bad part of the standard curve. So I don't know. Listen, I'd like to be optimistic. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens as the financial and economic world collapses in the next few years. It'll bring out the best and the worst in people.
Yeah. Okay. Do you believe 3D printing is a form of technology that will continue to grow? And if so, what's an exciting application that comes to mind?
Well, I've never used a 3D printer. Have you?
I have used it a little. I have one here. And, one of the things I'm doing for homeschool is, well, one of the plans is we're going to set it up and we're going to create a bunch of exercises around it to see what's possible.
Oh, makes a lot of sense. And of course, that's like basic 3D printing. And,
yeah,
ultimately, it's going to be like on Star Trek. What was that device that they'd order up the food and it would appear?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, but I'm sure that's quite possible because you've got these 92 naturally occurring elements, and nanotechnology is all about putting them together in the way you want. And it's kind of 3D printing. So I think it's going to be a real big deal as technology develops.
Yeah, in that book, The Forever War, or maybe it's one of the subsequent ones that you've talked about before, they have a nano forge, which essentially is that. It just it creates stuff at the element level.
Yeah, so you don't have to bring along a huge stocked supply house. You just have basic elements and the software and the machinery to put them together, and magic can happen. And any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So there's lots of cause for optimism in the future, as long as we don't have criminals running society.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Next question. How plausible does Doug think it is that the powers that should not be may introduce a CBDC by means of an interest rate differential, whereby fiat continues to exist but sees rising rates, but a digital currency is introduced at historically low rates to attract adoption?
That could be a clever twist on the part of the bad guys, where they encourage the hoi polloi to use digital currencies because it'll all go through the central bank, and they'll pay you higher interest if you transact in digital currencies. Or if you borrow, maybe they'll, lower interest is what you'll have to pay. Yeah, they'll try all kinds of things like that to get people to stupidly engage with them. Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
Okay. Does Doug think gold will go down when the shit hits the fan?
No, no, I don't. What could happen, and it depends on how incompetent the Federal Reserve is. Of course, they shouldn't exist, but let's suppose let's suppose they have artificially high interest rates and they reduce the money supply, which is what's happening now. The money supply is actually dropping for the first
By a
time
lot.
in many, many years. So what could be the consequences of that? Well, over-indebted corporations and over-indebted individuals and local governments too could declare bankruptcy. And it could be like a daisy chain. One corporation's bankrupt, can't pay the bills to the next one. It's bankrupt. Same with individuals. Banks go bust, corporations go bust. Yeah, they could bring on a credit collapse, and the number of dollars fall drastically, and people that still owe in dollars need them to pay their debts. So the dollar could temporarily become worth more and gold could be worth less. I don't know if I'm being clear, but that's how deflation could work. So yeah, it's possible gold could go down, but and is that one thing that these evil geniuses are thinking might be a good way to reset things? It's hard to predict, but I mean,
Well, in the financial crisis, in that credit event, initially gold went down along with basically everything, but it found its footing and quickly recovered and went to new highs, right? So not new highs, but
yeah, I think unless we have a global police state, which is possible, but it's so hard to call the odds on things like this. Gold will again be used as something close to day-to-day money. I mean, it's hard to say, but with let's say 6 billion ounces of gold in the world, and it's funny how they always talk about gold in tons now, which is completely meaningless. That's a whole different thing. But let's talk about ounces, which is how it's priced and used. 6 billion ounces of gold in the world, 8 billion people, $2,000 an ounce. Yeah, I think gold, when we have a new monetary system set up, is going to be a lot higher than it is now in real terms. Real terms. Who knows in dollar terms? I don't know if that answers the question, but don't worry about it. Keep building your gold position.
Okay. Next question is, what's your favorite brand of firearm? Looking for a favorite manufacturer.
Well, it would have been, should have been Colt. But of course, that company has long been bought and sold and so forth, and corporate whores run it, whatever's left of it. So forget about that. Although my favorite firearm per se is a 1911. So, and could you say Armalite? Well, there's all kinds of Armalite clones out there today, but I don't know if that's publicly traded or one of them or any of them is. I don't know. I guess the only one it seemed like it was pretty ideologically sound was Ruger, but I think they've gone soft too. So I don't think I have a favorite. Yeah,
Okay.
maybe the good people at Glock are still pretty sound.
Yeah, I don't know about them, but Glock's a good, reliable gun for sure. They do a good job.
Right out of the box, they work first time every time.
Yeah. Okay. Doug, what is your take on the possibility of the USA pulling out of the UN? And if it did, what would be the implications?
They'd be wonderful. I mean, for one thing, the UN couldn't or wouldn't afford its office space there in New York. So that building would become available. And the UN serves absolutely, as far as I can tell, absolutely no useful purpose whatsoever. In fact, it's the opposite. It's purely destructive. All these agencies, it's just a party central for third worlders that are lucky enough to get out of their shitholes and, you know, live high off the hog and run with other similar people in New York, and create trouble when they all get together and blah, blah. I mean, really a stupid institution. So what are the chances the US will get out of it? Well, I don't know how, because the US is by far the largest supporter, paying the UN and its agencies bills. How many billions? I'm guessing, you know, these numbers, they're adding zeros to them all the time. I'll guess 5 billion. What's the cost to be a member of the UN for the US? 10 billion? We could probably look it up. If we could dig through the obscure accounting where things are hidden here and there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Let me just go to the next question.
It's not gonna happen until we have a total reset here in the US. Hopefully the kind of reset that Milei is going to have in Argentina. But, you know, I'm wondering, the way he's cozying up to the IMF and the Biden administration. I mean, listen, how does he think that the Jacobins and the Biden administration are going to have anything to do with what he wants to do? It's crazy. What did he think that he was going to accomplish by meeting with Bill Clinton when he was in the US a while ago? These are mysteries to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And just the declaration of political alliances early on saying, you know, definitely support Ukraine, definitely support the US, definitely support Israel, and really opposed to Russia and China. But he does say, you know, he can do business with them. But like, why that doesn't help?
No, it doesn't help at all. I mean, he should, it's like Thomas Jefferson said, a friend to all, an ally to none. And, you know, we wish you well and try not to kill each other. Other than that, we don't care what you do.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Next question here. What's your opinion on the incumbent regime, aka the globalists, pulling out something to prevent Trump from winning the next election?
High, extremely high. It's happening right now where they're using lawfare. I mean, it's actually unbelievable. They've they've come up with all kinds of bullshit charges that these horrible attorneys, attorney generals or prosecuting attorneys or whatever, have accused him of. And there's more to come, I'm sure. So no,
Yeah, there's an active effort to get him off the ballot in certain states to disqualify him. Yeah.
Yeah, these people are really doing their best to create chaos. And the people that support Trump, for whatever reasons, mainly because they're cultural conservatives, and in today's world, he's unfortunately the best we can do to, not be an active progressive or communist. So, I mean, there's scores of millions of decent Americans that are, I think, really pissed off seeing what's going on. So we go back to the Civil War scenario. I mean, this current Civil War, like a real, I mean, this year could be, 2024 could be more than just interesting.
It's going to be an interesting year everywhere, I think. I don't think it's going to be, yeah.
Absolutely everywhere. And you know what happens? It's like this 100th monkey theorem. You know, some monkeys hear about or feel some other monkey on some other islands doing something. And yeah, let's do that too. And with the world financial and economic system on the razor edge and all this stuff going on, this could be a very interesting year. A farm in South America is looking better and better.
I agree 100%. All right, just a couple more questions for you today. It says, it seems these days many of the environmental groups seem to neglect many of the current environmental disasters around the world, such as the deforestation of the Amazon, chemicals and drugs leaching into soil and water supply, microplastics, etc., while only focusing on carbon credits. That's all they want to discuss. Why do you think it is? And is it possible to reverse some of the real environmental damage, or is it too far gone?
No, it's not too far gone. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I suggest you listen to George Carlin's take on that. Wonder if we can dig that up and have a link to it.
Yeah, I'll look for it.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
planet's gonna be just fine. The planet's not going away. If anything, people are going away. So forget about the environment and and the carbon and monoxide and all the rest of this type of thing. That none of the people that are worried about this really understand. Yeah, nobody likes to see crap floating around in the ocean, but it's a big ocean. Don't worry about it too much. It'll, you know.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was surprised by this stat when I found it years ago was, this concept of deforestation, and people assume, the forests are getting worse and worse, but compared to 100 years ago, there's something like 3 times as many trees on Earth as there were 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And the fact of the matter is that if civilization collapsed totally, I mean, nature would take it all over in 100 years, and we'd hardly even know anybody. Nobody know we were here, basically.
Yeah, I stayed in this fishing resort in the Darien Gap in Panama, and it was in this very isolated spot. You had to take you took a small plane to get there and land on a dirt runway where there's natives that, like look like they're from Africa, basically. I mean, the women don't wear shirts. They're really very, very primitive natives right in that area. And for this resort, they had 60 full-time people that their job was to keep back the jungle. And if they weren't working constantly to beat it back, it would overwhelm this property within, a very short period of time. Like it's very hard and nature wins.
That's very interesting. Yeah, all those cities in the jungle in Mexico and Guatemala that the Mayans and yes, all overgrown and
They just disappear. Okay, last question. If you were eligible for a French passport by descent and were Australian, would you get it, or would the tax implications be worse since they are a high tax country?
well, the taxes that the French, look, right now, the French tax you if you live there more than, I don't know what the rules are exactly, but it's probably 6 months of the year, which is what it is for most countries. So it doesn't matter if you have a French passport or not. If you're French and you don't live in France, you don't pay taxes to France. The only country of which that's true is the US. Now, other countries are talking about it. The Germans and the French and the Canadians are talking about emulating the US and taxing their citizens no matter where they go. Well, at that point, get rid of the damn passport and citizenship. But right now, if you can get a French passport in addition to your Australian one, good idea, go for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, the tax harmonization, as they call it, is happening. But in the meantime, you should do it.
Yeah, I can't wait to see who's going to win. As Sam Peckinpah would put it, the bad guys or the not so bad guys.
Let's hope the not so bad guys for a while take a turn at the wheel.
For a while, right?
Yeah. All right. Awesome. We'll leave it there for today, Doug, and be back next week with some more. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, Matt.